The studio lights burned bright, casting a warm glow over the set of the Kelly Clarkson Show. The audience buzzed with anticipation, their chatter a low hum as they settled into their seats. Kelly Clarkson, in a sharp blazer and jeans, stood backstage, sipping water from a glass, her eyes scanning the cue cards one last time. Her team had prepped her for today's guest, Whoopi Goldberg, a legend in entertainment, known for her sharp wit and unfiltered opinions. The booking was a coup, a chance to draw in viewers hungry for real talk. But Kelly's producer Janine had pulled her aside that morning, a crease in her brow. Whoopi's in a mood, she'd said, her voice low. Something about a news cycle hitting her hard, just tread lightly. Kelly nodded, brushing it off. She'd handled tough guests before. Her charm, that Texas warmth, could usually melt even the iciest personalities. She adjusted her mic, flashed a grin at her stage manager, and strode out to the stage as the band kicked into her theme song. The crowd erupted, and she waved, her laugh cutting through the noise. "All right, y'all, let's get this party started," she called, settling into her chair. The cameras swung into position, and the energy in the room crackled. Backstage, Whoopi waited in the green room, her arms crossed, staring at a monitor showing Kelly's opening monologue. Her face was unreadable, but her foot tapped a steady rhythm against the floor. She'd agreed to this appearance to promote her new memoir, a raw dive into her life, her career, and the battles she'd fought in Hollywood. But the morning's headlines had soured her mood. A tabloid had dredged up an old feud, twisting her words from a recent interview into something ugly. She'd seen the social media posts piling on, calling her out, misquoting her. The internet was a furnace, and she was tired of getting burned. The stage manager poked her head in. "Whoopi, you're up in 5. Whoopi nodded, adjusting her glasses. She wasn't here to play nice or dodge hard questions. If Kelly wanted real, she'd get it. She stood, smoothing her jacket, and headed for the stage. Out front, Kelly rapped her monologue, tossing to a commercial break. The audience clapped as the lights dimmed, and she leaned over to Janine, who'd slipped into the wings. "She good," Kelly whispered. Janine shrugged, her lips tight. "She's Whoopi. Just keep it light to start." Kelly nodded, but something in her gut twisted. She'd seen Whoopi's interviews, the way she could command a room or shut it down with a single look. This wasn't going to be a fluff piece. The break ended, and the band struck up again. Kelly turned to the crowd, her smile wide but her eyes sharp. "Y'all, I am so thrilled to have this next guest. She's an icon, a trailblazer, and she's got a new book out that you're going to want to read. Please welcome the one and only Whoopi Goldberg." The audience roared as Whoopi stepped out, her stride deliberate, her smile polite but guarded. She waved briefly, settling into the guest chair as Kelly leaned in, her energy bright but cautious. "Thanks for being here, Whoopi," Kelly began, her voice warm. "This book, it's so raw, so honest. What made you want to put it all out there now?" Whoopi tilted her head, her fingers tapping the armrest. "You know, Kelly, I've been in this game a long time. People think they know you, but they only see pieces. I wanted to tell my story, my way, before someone else tries to do it for me." Her tone was even, but there was an edge, a warning. Kelly nodded, keeping her smile steady. "That's powerful, and you don't hold back in it, do you?" Whoopi, eyes narrowed slightly. "Why would I? Life's too short for half-truths." The audience clapped, but the air felt heavier now. Kelly shifted, sensing the undercurrent. She glanced at her cue cards, then back at Whoopi. "So, let's talk about some of those truths. You've been in the spotlight forever, but lately, there's been a lot of noise online about you. How do you deal with that?" Whoopi's smile faded, her posture stiffening. "Noise," she said, her voice low. "That's a nice way to put it. You mean the lies people spread to get clicks?" The crowd murmured, sensing the shift. Kelly's grin faltered, but she leaned forward, trying to keep it light. "Well, sure, the internet can be a wild place, but you've always been so good at shutting that down. Any tricks for staying above it?" Whoopi leaned back, her gaze piercing. "Tricks, Kelly? I don't play games with liars. You call it out, or you walk away. That's it." The room went quiet, the audience holding their breath. Kelly's laugh was quick, nervous. "Fair enough, let's pivot to the book." But Whoopi wasn't done. "No, let's not pivot. You brought it up. You want to talk noise. Let's talk about why people feel so comfortable twisting my words." Kelly's eyes widened, her hands gripping the armrests. This was spiraling, and fast. Janine, in the wings, was signaling to cut to commercial, but Kelly shook her head slightly. She wasn't backing down yet. "Okay, let's talk it," she said, her voice steady but her heart racing. "What's got you fired up about this?" Whoopi's jaw tightened, and for a moment, it looked like she might stand and walk off right then. Whoopi's silence stretched, her eyes locked on Kelly, the weight of her stare pinning the host to her chair. The audience was still, their earlier cheers replaced by a tense hush. Kelly's pulse thumped in her ears, but she held Whoopi's gaze, refusing to flinch. She'd been in tough spots before, guests who clammed up, others who got snippy, but this felt different. Whoopi wasn't just upset. She was a coiled spring, ready to snap. Kelly cleared her throat, her voice careful, but firm. You're right, people twist words, so let's set it straight. What's the one thing you wish folks would get right about you? Whoopi's fingers stopped tapping, her hands settling flat on the armrests. The one thing, she said, her voice low, almost a growl, that I'm not here to be their punching bag. I've spent decades building something real, movies, shows, books, and still every time I open my mouth, someone's waiting to tear it apart. They don't want truth, Kelly, they want a villain. The crowd shifted, a few murmurs rippling through three. Some nodded, others looked uneasy, unsure where this was going. Kelly leaned forward, her elbows on her knees, trying to bridge the gap. I hear you, that's gotta be exhausting. But you've got this platform, this book, to tell your side. That's huge, right? She was reaching, trying to steer back to safer ground, but Whoopi wasn't biting. A platform, Whoopi said, her tone sharp. You think a book stops the noise? You think coming on shows like this does? She gestured at the set, her hands slicing through the air. I'm here, pouring my heart out. And tomorrow, someone's gonna clip this twist, and make me the bad guy again. The audience stirred, a few clapping in support, but the energy was fracturing. Kelly's producer, Janine, was now frantically waving from the wings, her eyes wide, mouthing commercial. Kelly ignored her, her focus locked on Whoopi. She wasn't about to let this derail completely. Okay, but that's why you're here, isn't it? To take control of the narrative, Kelly said, her voice steady but her smile gone. You're not just anybody, Whoopi. People listen when you speak. Whoopi's laugh was sharp, humorless. Do they, or do they just wait for me to slip so they can pounce? She leaned forward now, mirroring Kelly's posture, her glasses catching the stage lights. Let me ask you something, Kelly. You ever have someone take your words, your life, and turn it into something ugly, just to sell ads? The question hung heavy, and Kelly froze. She had plenty of times. The tabloids loved her divorce, her weight, her every misstep. But this wasn't her moment to share. It was Whoopi's. I have, Kelly said quietly, her honesty cutting through the tension. It stinks. But I try to focus on what I can control. Like this show, this conversation. She gestured between them, her eyes earnest. We're here, right now, having a real talk. That matters. For a moment, it seemed like Whoopi might soften, her shoulders easing slightly. But then her jaw tightened again, and she shook her head. Real talk. This isn't real talk. This is a soundbite waiting to happen. The crowd gasped softly, and Kelly's stomach dropped. She could feel the show slipping out of her grip, the cameras catching every second of this unraveling. Janine was practically jumping now, her hand slicing through the air, but Kelly held up a finger, signaling to wait. She wasn't done yet. All right, she said, her voice low, almost a challenge. Then, let's make it real. Forget the cameras. Forget the noise. What do you want to say, right now, to the people watching? Whoopi's eyes flicked to the audience, then back to Kelly, searching for something sincerity, maybe, or a trap. What I want to say, she started, her voice slow, deliberate, is that I'm tired. Tired of being the one who's got to explain herself over and over. Tired of people acting like they know me from a headline. I wrote this book to tell my truth, but truth don't sell like drama does. She paused, her gaze sweeping the room. And y'all know it, the audience erupted, some cheering, others whispering. The room split between those moved by her rawness and those unsure how to react. Kelly nodded, her lips pressed tight. That's real, she said, her voice soft but firm. And I respect that, but let me push back a little. You're saying truth doesn't sell, but you're here, selling it. Why keep fighting if it's so hard? It was a risky move, and Kelly knew it, but she wasn't here to play it safe. Whoopi's eyes flashed, and for a moment, it looked like she might stand and walk. Instead, she leaned back, crossing her arms. Why? Because if I don't, they win. The ones who twist, who lie, who make a living off my name, they win. Her voice was steady now, but there was fire behind it. Kelly nodded, sensing the moment teetering on a knife's edge. She had to keep Whoopi engaged, keep her talking, or this could spiral into something neither of them could control. The air in the studio thickened, the audience hanging on every word as Whoopi's declaration echoed. Kelly felt the weight of it, the raw defiance in Whoopi's voice, and knew she had to tread carefully. This wasn't just a talk show segment anymore. It was a confrontation, one that could define the episode, maybe even the week's news cycle. She leaned forward, her hands clasped, her eyes steady on Whoopi's. That's powerful, she said, her voice low, deliberate. You're out here fighting, refusing to let them win. But let me ask you this, how do you keep that fire without burning out? Whoopi's expression shifted, a flicker of something softer crossing her face, like the question had caught her. Off guard, she adjusted her glasses, her fingers lingering on the frames. Burning out, she said, her tone quieter now, almost reflective. You don't, not really. You just learn to live with the heat. Some days, it's fuel. Others, it's a weight. But I've been doing this too long to quit now. The audience murmured, a wave of empathy rippling through the crowd. A few clapped, their support tentative but growing. Kelly nodded, sensing a crack in Whoopi's armor, a chance to pull the conversation back from the edge. That's real strength, she said, her smile returning, softer this time. And your book, it's full of that. Stories about pushing through, finding your voice. Can you share one that really shaped you? She was trying to pivot, to ground the talk in Whoopi's memoir, to give her a chance to shine without the shadow of the internet's noise. Whoopi's gaze drifted, like she was sifting through decades of memories shaped me, she said, her voice steady but distant. There was this one time, early in my career, doing stand-up in a dive bar in New York. Some guy in the crowd starts heckling, throwing slurs, trying to rattle me. Walked off. Most would have, but I stayed, turned it back on him, made the room laugh at him instead. That night, I learned you don't run from the fight. You flip it. The audience erupted, their cheers louder now, feeding off her defiance. Kelly grinned, leaning back. That's why you're Whoopi Goldberg, she said, her tone warm, almost conspiratorial. You flipped the script. That's what this book's about, right? Taking control. She was gaining traction, the energy in the room lifting, but Whoopi's smile was tight, her eyes still sharp. Sure, she said, her voice clipped, but control's an illusion. Kelly, you write a book, you do these shows, but the second you step off this stage, someone's already cutting it up, making you the villain again. The crowd went quiet, the mood shifting back to unease. Kelly's grin faded, her mind racing for a way to keep this from derailing. Janine was in the wings again, her hands raised, ready to call for a break, but Kelly shook her head, her jaw set. Okay, but you're here now, she said, her voice firm. This stage, this moment, it's yours. What do you want people to take away from this book, from you, right now? Whoopi leaned forward, her elbows on her knees, her gaze intense. I want them to stop looking for the gotcha. Stop waiting for me to mess up so they can point and say, see, told you she's a problem. I want them to read the book and see a person, not a headline. Her words were measured, but there was a tremor beneath them, a mix of frustration and exhaustion. The audience clapped, but it was scattered, like they weren't sure how to process it. Kelly nodded, her eyes locked on Whoopi's. That's fair, she said softly, and I think a lot of folks watching are going to hear that and get it. She paused, glancing at the audience, then back at Whoopi. But let's talk about the people who do get it, the ones who've been with you from the jump. What's it like knowing you've got that kind of support, even when the noise gets loud? Whoopi's posture eased slightly, her hands unclenching. That's the only thing that keeps you going, she said, her voice softer now. The people who show up, who read the work, who see you. Not the ones screaming online, but the ones who write letters, who come to shows, who tell you they get it. She paused, her eyes scanning the crowd. Those are my people. Always have been. The audience cheered, the sound swelling, and Kelly seized the moment, her smile returning. That's beautiful, she said, her voice lifting. And those people, they're why you keep telling your story, right? She was trying to build on the warmth, to keep Whoopi open, but there was still a tension in her guest's frame, a wariness that hadn't fully dissipated. Whoopi nodded, but her eyes flicked to the side, like she was bracing for the next blow. Kelly sensed it, the fragile balance of the moment. She needed to keep Whoopi engaged, to avoid another spark that could ignite the whole conversation. But the clock was ticking, and the audience was restless, waiting for what came next. The studio lights seemed to burn hotter as the audience's cheers faded into a low hum, their energy teetering between admiration and uncertainty. Kelly Clarkson leaned back in her chair, her hands resting lightly on her thighs, her mind racing, to keep the conversation on track. Whoopi's words about her supporters had struck a chord, but the tension in her posture, the way her eyes darted toward the wings, told Kelly this wasn't over. The air felt charged, like a storm brewing just out of sight. She had to keep Whoopi talking, keep her grounded, or risk losing the thread entirely. You know, Kelly said, her voice warm but deliberate. It's those people, the ones who get you, who make all this worth it. Can you tell us about a moment when someone's support really hit home for you? Like a letter or a conversation that stuck with you. She was reaching for connection, hoping to draw Whoopi into a story that could lighten the mood, remind everyone why they were here. Whoopi's gaze softened for a moment, her fingers tracing the edge of her chair. There was this one letter, she said, her voice quieter, almost wistful, came from a woman in Ohio, maybe 10 years ago. She wrote about how she saw me in the color purple when she was a kid, said it changed how she saw herself. She was in a tough spot, felt invisible, but watching me up there, she felt seen. Said she carried that with her through her whole life. Whoopi paused, her eyes distant. That kind of thing, it's not just support, it's a lifeline. The audience let out a collective sigh, some clapping softly, others nodding. Kelly smiled, genuine this time, her shoulders easing. That's beautiful, she said. It's like you gave her a piece of you, and she gave it back in that letter. She leaned forward, sensing an opening. Does that kind of connection make it easier to deal with the noise we were talking about earlier? Whoopi's expression hardened, the softness vanishing like a door slamming shut. Easier, she said, her voice sharp again. No, it doesn't erase the garbage. It just reminds you why you keep wading through it. She shifted in her seat, her arms crossing tightly. See, that's what people don't get, Kelly. You can have all the love in the world, but the hate, it's louder, and it's relentless. Her words cut through the room, and the audience stilled, the warmth from moments ago evaporating. Kelly's smile faltered, but she pressed on, her voice steady. I get that. It's like the good stuff gets drowned out sometimes. But you're still here, still fighting. That's gotta count for something. She was trying to bridge the gap, to keep Whoopi from slipping back into that defensive edge, but she could feel the conversation tilting again. Like a car veering toward a cliff, Whoopi's eyes narrowed, her jaw tight. Fighting, she said, almost to herself. Yeah, that's what it is. But sometimes, Kelly, you get tired of swinging. You just want to say what you mean and have it heard, not chopped up into someone else's story. She leaned forward, her voice rising slightly. Like right now, I'm sitting here trying to talk about my book, my life, but I know how this goes. Tomorrow, some blog's gonna say I was combative or difficult, and you know what? I'm sick of it. The audience gasped, a low ripple of shock moving through the crowd. Kelly's producer, Janine, was back in the wings, her hands raised, signaling for a commercial break. But Kelly's eyes flicked to her, a silent no. She wasn't cutting away. Not yet. I hear you, Kelly said, her voice calm but firm. And I don't want that to happen here. This is your space to say what you need to say. So, let's do it. What's the one thing you want to make crystal clear, right now? No filter. Whoopi's gaze locked onto Kelly's, and for a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. The one thing, she said, her voice low, almost dangerous, that I'm not your drama. I'm not your villain. I'm a person who's been through hell and back, who's still standing, still speaking. And if you can't hear that without turning it into a headline, that's on you. The words landed like a punch, and the audience erupted. Some cheering, others murmuring. The room split between awe and discomfort. Kelly nodded, her lips pressed tight, her mind racing. She'd pushed for real, and she'd gotten it, but the cost was clear. The show was on a razor's edge, and Whoopi's fire was burning hotter than ever. That's raw, Kelly said, her voice steady but her heart pounding. And I respect it. Let's keep it there. Keep it real. What's next for you? With this book? With this fight? She was grasping, trying to steer back to safer ground, but Whoopi's posture was rigid, her eyes still blazing, and Kelly knew the next words could make or break the moment. The studio was a pressure cooker, the audience's claps and murmurs fading into a tense hum as Whoopi's words hung in the air. Kelly Clarkson sat forward, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes fixed on Whoopi, who was still rigid, her gaze burning with a mix of defiance and exhaustion. The room felt smaller, the cameras intrusive, catching every flicker of emotion. Kelly knew she was walking a tightrope, one wrong word, and this could spiral beyond repair. But she wasn't backing down. She'd asked for real, and Whoopi had delivered. Now it was about keeping her in the chair, keeping the conversation alive. What's next? Whoopi, repeated Kelly's question, her voice low, almost mocking. She leaned back, her arms still crossed, her glasses glinting under the stage lights. Next is, I keep going. I keep writing, keep talking, keep showing up. But not because it's easy, Kelly, because if I stop, they get to write the end of my story. Her words were measured, but there was a tremor beneath them, a raw edge that silenced the crowd. A few nodded, their faces serious, while others shifted uncomfortably. Sensing the storm wasn't over, Kelly nodded, her expression earnest. That's why you're here, right? To make sure it's your story, your voice. She paused, choosing her words carefully. In this book, it's a big part of that. Can you tell us what it was like, putting all this down, knowing it's going out into the world? She was trying to anchor the conversation back to the memoir, to give Whoopi a chance to shine without the weight of the earlier clash. Whoopi's eyes flicked to the audience, then back to Kelly, her posture loosening, just a fraction. Writing it was like pulling teeth, she said, her voice softer now, but still sharp. You dig into your life, your mistakes, your wins, and you know people are gonna pick it apart. But I did it anyway, because if I don't tell it, someone else will, and they'll get it wrong. She leaned forward, her hands gesturing now, animated. This book isn't just my story, it's for anyone who's ever been counted out, told they don't belong. That's who I wrote it for. The audience broke into applause, louder this time, the energy shifting toward admiration. Kelly seized the moment, her smile returning. That's powerful, she said, her voice warm. And it's why people connect with you. You're not just telling your story, you're giving others permission to tell theirs. She was building momentum, trying to keep the positivity flowing, but she could still see the wariness in Whoopi's eyes, like she was waiting for the other shoe to drop. You say that, Whoopi replied, her tone cooling again, but connection doesn't stop the noise. I can pour my heart out, and tomorrow, some blog's gonna say I was angry or unhinged on your show. You know how it works. She gestured at the cameras, her voice rising. This right here. It's a trap. You want real, but only if it fits the script. The crowd gasped, the air tightening again. Kelly's producer, Janine, was back in the wings, her hands slicing through the air, desperate for a commercial break, but Kelly held her ground, her jaw set. That's not what this is, Kelly said, her voice firm, a hint of steel beneath her warmth. I asked you here because I respect you, because I want your voice heard. If this feels like a trap, tell me how to make it right. It was a bold move, putting the ball in Whoopi's court, and the audience leaned in, their silence deafening. Kelly's heart pounded. She was either diffusing this or pouring fuel on the fire. Whoopi stared at her, her expression unreadable, her fingers gripping the armrests. Make it right, she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. You can't, not you, not this show, not anyone. Because the second I walk off this stage, it's out of my hands. And that's the problem. She stood suddenly, her chair scraping against the floor, and the audience gasped. A collective intake of breath. Kelly's eyes widened, her hands rising instinctively, as if to stop her. Whoopi, wait, Kelly said, standing too, her voice urgent but calm. We're not done. You've got more to say, and I want to hear it. The crowd murmured, some calling out in support, others frozen, unsure. Whoopi paused, one hand on her hip, the other adjusting her glasses. Her gaze locked on Kelly. For a moment, it looked like she might sit back down, like the conversation could still be salvaged. But her eyes flicked to the cameras, then back to the audience, and something in her snapped. I'm done, she said, her voice final. She turned, her steps deliberate, and walked off the stage, the audience erupting into a mix of gasps and murmurs as the lights dimmed for a commercial break. The studio plunged into chaos as Whoopi's footsteps echoed off the stage, her silhouette vanishing into the wings. The audience's gasps turned into a low roar of whispers, some leaning forward, others craning their necks to catch a glimpse of her exit. Kelly Clarkson stood frozen, her hands still raised, her face a mix of shock and determination. The cameras swiveled, catching every angle of the empty guest chair, its armrests still warm from Whoopi's grip. Janine, the producer, was a blur in the wings, barking orders into her headset, her face pale as the crew scrambled to cut to commercial. The band struck up a hasty transition, but the music felt hollow, unable to mask the raw energy left in Whoopi's wake. Kelly lowered her hands, her eyes darting to the audience, who were now buzzing, some clapping in solidarity, others murmuring in disbelief. She forced a smile, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. Well, folks, she said, stepping toward the crowd. That was real, wasn't it? A few laughs broke through the tension, but most of the audience stayed quiet, waiting for her to fill the void. She glanced at the wings, where Janine was signaling to wrap it up, but Kelly wasn't ready to let it go. Not like this. All right, y'all, she said, her Texas drawl cutting through the unease. We're gonna take a quick break, but stick with us. We've got more to talk about. The audience clapped, more out of habit than enthusiasm, as the lights dimmed and the commercial break rolled. Kelly exhaled, her shoulders slumping as she walked to the edge of the stage, where Janine was waiting, her arms crossed, her face a storm cloud. What was that? Janine hissed, her voice low. We can't air this. She just walked off. Kelly shook her head, her jaw tight. We're airing it, she said, her voice firm. It's real, Janine. People don't want polished. They want truth. Janine opened her mouth to argue, but Kelly was already turning away, her mind racing. She knew the risks clips of this would be all over the internet by tonight. Dissected, memed, turned into fodder for the very noise Whoopi had railed against. But she also knew this was what her show was about. Real moments, even the messy ones backstage. Whoopi was in the green room, her coat slung over her arm, her bag in hand. The stage manager hovered nearby, unsure whether to approach. Whoopi's face was unreadable, her glasses tucked into her pocket as she stared at the floor, her breathing heavy. She'd walked off stages before, but this felt different. Exposed, like she'd left a piece of herself out there. Part of her wanted to go back, to finish what she'd started. But the weight of it all, the cameras, the questions, the endless cycle of being misunderstood, kept her rooted. The break ended, and Kelly strode back to the stage. The audience's applause louder now, fueled by curiosity. She settled into her chair, the empty one beside her, a glaring reminder of the clash. All right, y'all, she said, her voice steady, her smile softer. We just had a moment, didn't we? Whoopi Goldberg, she's a force, and she laid it all out there. I respect that, and I hope you do too. The crowd clapped, some cheering, others still processing. Kelly leaned forward, her hands clasped. She talked about her book, her truth, and how hard it is to be heard in a world that's quick to judge. That's something we can all relate to, right? The audience nodded, their energy shifting, warming to her words. Kelly seized the moment, her voice rising. Her book's out there, and it's real, just like she is. It's about fighting to be seen, to be heard, to tell your story your way. And I think we owe it to her to listen, to really hear what she's saying. She paused, her eyes scanning the crowd. Because that's what this show's about. Real people, Real stories, even when it gets messy. The applause swelled, and Kelly felt the room come back to her, the tension easing just enough. She glanced at the empty chair, her heart still heavy. "I hope Whoopi knows we're listening," she said, her voice softer now. "And I hope y'all will pick up her book, give it a read, and see the woman behind the headlines." The crowd cheered, and Kelly nodded, her smile genuine but tinged with regret. She'd wanted more time, more space to bridge the gap, but sometimes real meant letting it end raw. As the band played her out, Kelly stood, waving to the audience, her mind already on the fallout. The internet would have a field day, but she'd meant what she said. This was real, and real was worth it. Backstage, Whoopi slipped out the side door, her steps heavy but resolute, already bracing for the storm she knew was coming.